12 kilometers beneath the frozen tundra of northwestern Russia lies the deepest hole ever drilled by human hands. For over 2 decades, Soviet scientists bored through rock older than complex life itself, descending deeper into our planet than anyone had gone before or has gone since. Then, in 1992, they stopped. The drill bit fell silent. The project died. Some say they heard something down there. Voices, screams, the sounds of hell itself. The truth is stranger and more unsettling than any legend. This is Blueprint. The year is 1970. The Cold War burns at its coldest. While America plants flags on the moon, the Soviet Union sets its sights in the opposite direction, downward into the unexplored depths of the Earth itself. On May 24th, 1970, drilling begins on the Kola Peninsula, 10 kilometers south of the Norwegian border, in one of the most remote corners of the Soviet Union. The location is designated SG3, Kola Super Deep Borehole. The goal is audacious: to drill deeper than anyone has ever drilled before, to penetrate the Earth's crust and study its composition directly, not through seismic waves or educated guesses, but by touching it, sampling it, understanding it from the inside. This is not a search for oil or minerals. This is pure science, a Soviet answer to American space exploration. If the Americans can reach for the stars, the Soviets will conquer the depths. The Kola project is part of a larger scientific competition. The Americans are drilling off the coast of Mexico in the Pacific Ocean floor. They are targeting the Mohorovičić discontinuity, the Moho, the boundary between the Earth's crust and mantle. The race is on to see who can reach it first. The drilling rig at Kola is a massive structure, an Uralmash 4E platform standing sentinel over the frozen landscape. The crew works in shifts around the clock, driving the drill bit deeper, meter by meter, through rock that has not seen light in billions of years. The first kilometer takes months. The rock is ancient Precambrian crystalline basement, some of it dating back 2.7 billion years. The drill chews through gneiss and schist, through metamorphic rocks that tell stories of continents colliding, of mountains rising and falling long before the first fish crawled onto land. At 3 kilometers, they are deeper than most mines. At 5 kilometers, they've exceeded the depth of the world's deepest ocean trenches. At 7 kilometers, they are in territory no human has ever reached by any means. Their work is grueling, technical, precise. The drill string, the long chain of pipes connecting the surface to the drill bit far below, must be carefully managed. Temperature rises approximately 25 degrees Celsius for every kilometer of depth. At 7 kilometers, the rocks are hot enough to boil water. By 1979, they reach 9,583 meters. They pause, cement the borehole, and start a new branch. This is SG3, the main branch that will become the deepest. The crew celebrates each milestone. Soviet officials visit the site, their photographs preserved in grainy black and white. Scientists from around the country rotate through, analyzing the core samples brought up from the depths. Each piece of rock is a revelation, a fragment of Earth's deep history. The deeper they drill, the more surprises emerge. The first shock comes early: water. At depths where the rock should be bone dry, crushed under unimaginable pressure, they find water. Not recent groundwater that has seeped down, but ancient water, trapped in the rock itself, held in microscopic fractures and pores. This water has been sealed away for hundreds of millions of years, isolated from the surface world. Scientists theorized the water comes from hydrogen and oxygen squeezed from the rock crystal structure by the immense pressures. It's a discovery that rewrites understanding of deep earth geology. Then come the fossils. At depths exceeding 6 kilometers, in rocks that should be sterile and lifeless, they find microscopic fossils, plankton, 24 different species, preserved in a stone that was never supposed to contain organic material at such depths. The implications ripple through the scientific community. These fossils suggest that oceanic sediments were driven far deeper into the crust than anyone believed possible, pushed down by tectonic forces and buried beneath kilometers of later rock. The temperature readings also defy predictions. Scientists expected temperatures to rise steadily and predictably. Instead, at around 7 kilometers, the temperature gradient suddenly increases. At 10 kilometers, the rocks are approaching 180 degrees Celsius, far hotter than models predicted. The rock becomes plastic, almost a fluid in its behavior under the combined effects of heat and pressure. The drill bit struggles. At these temperatures and pressures, the rock behaves less like solid stone and more like thick clay. The bit dulls quickly. Drilling slows to a crawl, but the team persists. Every meter is a victory, every core sample a treasure. They're writing the textbook on deep earth geology as they go, discovering things that were purely theoretical just years before. In 1983, they reached 12,000 meters, 12 kilometers. The depth is difficult to comprehend. If you could look down this hole, though you cannot, it's only 9 inches wide at the bottom. It would take an object more than 20 seconds to fall to the bottom, accelerating through darkness and heat. They push on. The goal is 15,000 meters, perhaps even deeper. The race with the Americans continues, though the American project has encountered its own difficulties in the ocean floor. The drill reaches 12,066 meters. Then disaster strikes. The drill string breaks. 5 kilometers of drill pipe are lost in the hole, irretrievably stuck in the superheated rock. Months of work, millions of rubles, gone. The team has no choice but to start again from 7,000 meters, re-drilling the lost depth. It's a crushing setback, but they've come too far to quit now. For years, they drill. Their work continues through the late 1980s, through glasnost and perestroika, through the slow unraveling of the Soviet Union itself. The project has momentum, institutional backing, a team of dedicated scientists and engineers who have devoted their careers to this singular goal. By 1989, they reached 12,262 meters. They surpassed their previous record. This is now officially the deepest hole humanity has ever created. Nothing else comes close. Not mines, not other boreholes, not any human excavation in history. The temperature at the bottom measures 180 degrees Celsius. The drill bit glows with heat when brought to the surface. The rock behaves in ways that makes drilling nearly impossible. Progress slows to meters per week, then meters per month. On September 6th, 1989, they stop at 12,262 meters. Not because they want to, but because they can't go further. The equipment cannot handle the heat. The rock is too plastic, too unstable. The drill string keeps jamming, keeps breaking. Plans are made to develop new heat-resistant drilling technology. They'll upgrade the equipment, improve the drill bits, find a way to continue. The goal of 15,000 meters is still theoretically possible, but the Soviet Union is collapsing. Funding dries up. Scientific priorities shift. The new Russian government, struggling with economic crisis, has little money for abstract this time, but because the money runs out, the project is abandoned. The equipment left to rust on the Kola tundra, the deepest hole in the world, stands empty, a monument to Soviet ambition and the limits of human reach. Somewhere in the confusion and despair of the Soviet collapse, a story emerges. It spreads through underground networks, through early internet forums, through chain emails and conspiracy newsletters. The story claims that Soviet scientists drilling on Kola broke through into a massive cavity at depth. They lowered heat-resistant microphones into this void. What they recorded was terrifying. Screams, millions of tortured voices, the unmistakable sounds of hell itself. Scientists supposedly fled in terror. Some had nervous breakdowns. The project was shut down, not for lack of funding, but because they'd drilled into something that humans were never meant to discover. The tale spreads rapidly through Christian fundamentalist circles in the 1990s. It appears in tabloids, on radio programs, in churches. A Finnish newspaper publishes a version. American religious broadcasters repeat it as fact. Some versions include names, specific scientists who heard the sounds, who experienced the supernatural horror. Some include detailed descriptions of the recording equipment, the cavity dimensions, the exact depth where hell was breached. The story has every element of compelling legend. Secret Soviet science, the hubris of man challenging God's domain, concrete details that sound plausible, and a dark, unsettling conclusion. There's only one problem. It's completely false. No cavity was discovered. No screams were recorded. No scientists fled in terror. The project wasn't shut down because of supernatural discoveries. It ended because of heat, mechanical failure, and lack of funding. The origin of the legend is eventually traced. In 1989, a Finnish newsletter published the story as a fabrication, a cautionary tale about trusting unverified claims. But the disclaimer was lost in translation and retransmission. The story took on a life of its own, mutating with each retelling, gaining false credibility through repetition. Soviet scientists involved with the actual Kola project expressed bewilderment and frustration at the legend. They try to set the record straight, but the myth is more compelling than the reality. The sounds from Hell story persists, spreading to new generations through the internet, through YouTube videos, through social media posts that present it as suppressed truth. Today, the Kola super deep borehole sits abandoned Soviet-era buildings, slowly being reclaimed by the Arctic wilderness. Human civilization is gone, a strange geological anomaly that future geologists might puzzle over. But the real story of Kola is not about supernatural horror. It's about what the project actually discovered. Revelations that quietly rewrote our understanding of the planet beneath our feet. The water at impossible depths suggested that Earth's crust is far more dynamic than anyone imagined. The fossils at 6 kilometers deep proved that tectonic processes can drive biological material to extraordinary depths. The temperature readings showed that our models of deep Earth heat were fundamentally wrong. Perhaps most importantly, Kola proved that direct observation of the deep Earth is extraordinarily difficult. The Moho, that boundary between crust and mantle that seemed so tantalizingly close, remains unreached. The Germans tried in the 1990s with the KTB borehole, drilling over 9 kilometers in Bavaria before stopping. The Japanese attempted it in the 2000s. No one has succeeded in reaching the Moho on land. The deepest current active drilling project is the Sakhalin I project in Russia's far east, but it drills horizontally into offshore oil deposits, not straight down. For pure vertical depth, Kola's record of 12,262 meters stands unbroken more than 3 decades later. This speaks to something profound about human exploration. We've sent probes to the edge of the solar system. We've landed rovers on Mars. We've imaged distant galaxies billions of light years away, but we cannot reach more than 12 kilometers into our own planet, a distance that represents less than 0.2% of the Earth's radius. The Earth keeps its secrets well. But what about those sounds? What did the scientists actually hear in the depths of the Kola borehole? The drilling process itself creates sound. The rotating drill bit, grinding against rock under tremendous pressure and heat, produces vibrations that travel up the drill string. These vibrations can be recorded and analyzed. They provide information about the type of rock being drilled, the condition of the drill bit, potential problems in the drilling process. At extreme depths, the sounds become strange, otherworldly. The rock itself is so compressed, so heated that its acoustic properties change. Vibrations travel differently. Resonances emerge that don't exist in surface conditions. Engineers and scientists working on deep drilling projects report eerie sounds routinely, not because they're drilling into hell, but because the physics of materials under extreme conditions creates acoustic phenomena that human ears never evolved to hear. These sounds are scientifically fascinating precisely because they're so alien, so different from anything in our ordinary experience. But there's another sound that deep drilling projects detect: seismic activity. At 12 kilometers depth, the drill bit is close enough to the lower crust that it can pick up subtle seismic vibrations. The constant creaking and groaning of tectonic plates, the stress being released in tiny increments that prevents major earthquakes. The sounds are continuous background noise of a living planet. They are the sound of Earth being Earth, moving, shifting, changing on time scales that make human lifespans seem like eye blinks. If you wanted to anthropomorphize it, you could call it breathing. The planet's deep, slow breath. That it's not the sound of hell, it's the sound of home, heard from an angle that almost no human has ever experienced. The Kola super deep borehole represents both the heights of human ambition and the limits of human capability. It was conceived during the Cold War, that strange era when superpowers measured themselves at not just in nuclear warheads, but in scientific achievements, in who could push further into the unknown. The Soviet Union poured resources into Kola that seem unimaginable now. Decades of sustained effort, teams of highly trained specialists, cutting-edge technology, all in service of pure scientific research with no immediate practical application. This was science for science's sake, knowledge for knowledge's sake. In that sense, Kola represents something admirable, even noble, human curiosity pushed to its absolute limit, regardless of cost or practical benefit. But it also represents hubris. The scientists began with confident predictions about what they'd find. They expected certain temperatures, certain rock types, certain conditions. They were wrong about nearly everything. The Earth surprised them at every depth, confounding their models, refusing to behave as expected. This is perhaps the deepest lesson of Kola. Our planet is far stranger, far more complex, far less knowable than our theories suggest. We live on the skin of a dynamic, active world that we barely understand. Our deepest drilling barely scratches the surface, literally. The mantle, the outer core, the inner core, these remain as remote and inaccessible as the surface of distant stars. The comparison to space exploration is instructive. We can send robots to Mars because space, for all its vastness, is empty. It's a vacuum. Crossing it requires dealing with radiation, cold, and distance, but not with matter actively resisting your passage. Drilling into Earth means pushing through solid rock that fights back, that heats up, that becomes plastic and flows, that breaks drill bits and jams equipment. It means working against planetary scale forces that make rocket launches look gentle by comparison. Why did the hell story take hold so powerfully? Why does it persist even now, decades after being debunked? Perhaps because it speaks to something deep in human psychology, the fear of what lies beneath, the anxiety about transgressing into forbidden territory, the suspicion that some knowledge is dangerous or damning. The idea of hell below and heaven above is ancient, predating Christianity, appearing in religious traditions across cultures. The underworld as a place of the dead, of punishment, of darkness. The earth itself as a threshold between the mundane and the divine. When Soviet scientists began drilling deep into the earth, they were, in the mythological sense, attempting to breach that threshold. They were doing what Orpheus did, what Dante did, what countless heroes and seekers in world mythology have attempted, journeying to the underworld and returning with forbidden knowledge. That they found only rock, water, heat, and fossils doesn't satisfy the mythological need. The story requires something more, something that validates the ancient fear of the depths. The hell legend gives people that validation. It says, yes, there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. Yes, the earth holds dark secrets. Yes, human ambition can go too far. Never mind that it's not true. It feels true. And in an age of rapid technological change, of scientific advancement that seems to leave traditional worldviews behind, that feeling matters to many people. The Kola super deep borehole is still there, under its rusted cap. A 12-kilometer shaft descending into darkness and heat. No one will ever go down it. At 9 inches wide and 180 degrees Celsius at the bottom, it's utterly inaccessible to humans. It's too narrow for any robot we could currently build to descend and return. It's essentially sealed. A time capsule of 1980s Soviet drilling technology abandoned in place. Over geological time, millions of years, they knew their drilling records would eventually be broken. They knew that most of what they discovered would be of interest only to specialists, that the general public would never appreciate the significance of water at 6 kilometers or there in the darkness and heat. Maybe it's why we're so compelled to imagine horrors in the unknown, rather than simply accepting that the universe and our planet contains mysteries we may never solve. The Kola super deep borehole doesn't go to hell. It goes exactly 12 kilometers, 262 meters down, and that in its own way is far more humbling than any demon's scream.